In Pursuit of Truth, this is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. We are back once again. Honestly, I'm not so sure I ever left. I'm pretty much still just sitting here, but we're back once again. And today we're doing something a little bit different, mixing it up for you, changing it up. We're going to start off with a little bit of a retro theme. We're flashing back right off the beginning. We're starting off in the past. So fist bump your neighbor and let's do the thing. You know the thing. Let's do the thing.
Got a flashback aside, take you back.
We're taking you back to post 4082 from the 4th of May. It's gonna be May. It was just yesterday. It's the near past because some of us are from the near future. Post 4082, never in our history has this been attempted. Patriots worldwide simply needed a spark to reignite the engine. Okay, well, I mentioned yesterday that I thought the spark was a little bit curious, and I just wanted to file it away in your head. Not in a creepy way, not in an MK Ultra kind of way, just more like a, hey, remember that kind of way. Now, let's go back to the now, which is the future. Sounds a lot creepier when you go forward. Yikes. That's why I only go to the near future. Don't want to go too far. We're at now, which is 4096, 37 minutes after the hour of 11, which for many of you is probably still the future. Are we good? Are we all good? Takes you to a Fox News link. Q says, information warfare, imagine that. And the link takes you here. Dems deploying DARPA-funded AI-driven information warfare tool to target pro-Trump accounts. We talked about this story yesterday involving General McChrystal. And DARPA, of course, are the mad scientists of the military, if you will. An anti-Trump Democratic-aligned political action committee advised by retired Army General Stanley McChrystal is planning to deploy an information warfare tool that reportedly received initial funding from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the Pentagon's secretive research arm. And for those of you who are not familiar, I think most of you already are, this is essentially where Facebook came out of. They shut another program down called LifeLog and then essentially opened up Facebook, transforming technology originally envisioned as a way to fight ISIS propaganda into a campaign platform to benefit Joe Biden. How convenient. So they're putting a lot of money into this. They're actually paying influencers to get online and push information, which of course they call credible information. It's called Defeat Disinfo. And we talked a little bit about this. We talked about Army General Stanley McChrystal. He was involved in this Abu Ghraib situation in which a lot of prisoners had been tortured. I'm very curious to see if this story is going to bust wider open. Q has often referred to Gina Haspel, who would also know a lot about that story. And we also talked about how it was very possible that General McChrystal was involved in the perceived cover-up, if you will, of whatever happened in the quote-unquote friendly fire situation with Pat Tillman, who was a famous football player who left to go into the military and was killed by quote-unquote friendly fire. So this was all under General Stanley McChrystal, but there's a story that I left out yesterday that I want to talk about today. And that is the story of this guy right here, Michael Hastings, a journalist. He was an editor to Rolling Stone and worked for BuzzFeed for quite some time. There you can see him with Valerie Jarrett in 2012. I think this is Barack Obama's victory party. But his fiance, Andrea Parhamovich, she was a National Democratic Institute employee and she got killed in Baghdad. He wrote a book about that entitled I Lost My Love in Baghdad. He wrote a few books and there's one particular assignment that I want to talk about. He actually won a George Polk Award for the Runaway General, which was from 2010, and this was in Rolling Stone, and it was a profile of our boy General Stanley McChrystal, who at the time was commanding NATO's International Security Assistance Force in the Afghanistan War. Now, Hastings was very anti-surveillance state, which seems to be very much what McChrystal is all about, and Hastings was a very vocal critic of the Obama administration. As a matter of fact, he wrote a story called Why Democrats Love to Spy on Americans. So this picture's starting to fill itself in a little bit, right? So this story that came out with Rolling Stone really painted McChrystal in a bad light, and it created a very embarrassing situation which led to a number of investigations being conducted by the Pentagon and whatnot. But this led to an apology. Let me read this to you from WikiWiki. McChrystal immediately issued an extensive apology, and Duncan Boothby, the civilian contractor responsible for coordinating the article with Hastings, resigned. U.S. President Barack Obama summoned McChrystal to the White House on June 23rd and relieved him of command. Hastings offered his views on relations between McChrystal and the Obama administration. And like I told you yesterday, he had to issue an apology to Joe Biden because he was really coming out saying some really disparaging things about Joe Biden, who is also in the news for some awkward stuff too, right? So this was a really big story which led to a bunch of other big stories, but it was showing that there was a lot of discord between our military and the administration at the time. But the story I want to talk about right now was on June 18th, 2013. Once again, from the WikiWiki, Hastings died in a single vehicle automobile crash in his Mercedes-Benz C250 coupe at approximately 4:25 a.m. in the Hancock Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. A witness to the crash said the car seemed to be traveling at maximum speed and was creating sparks and flames before it fishtailed and crashed into a palm tree. Video from a nearby security camera reportedly shows Hastings' vehicle speeding and bursting into flames. Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is show you a picture of the area. I'm actually familiar with this area. Now, it could very well be possible he was speeding through this area, but I just want to point out that it's a pretty nice neighborhood, and generally people are not speeding through this area. Witnesses describe the car's engine being ejected 50 to 60 yards from the scene. Hastings' body was burned beyond recognition. The coroner identified the body by matching fingerprints with those the FBI had on file. 2 days after the crash, the LA Police Department declared that there were no signs of foul play. The coroner's report ruled the death to be an accident. An autopsy showed that the cause of death was massive blunt force trauma consistent with a high-speed crash. Okay, so here we have a spark that ignited an engine. And it just so happened to remove a reporter who was uncovering some really, really big things at the time. This led to resignations. This led to multiple resignations and investigations. I also just pointed out that Hastings was anti-surveillance, whereas we're talking about McChrystal, who seems to be very pro-surveillance. And this spark that ignited the engine ejected the engine 50 to 60 yards, which suggests to me a possible explosion. Unless, of course, the crash that hit the tree sent it flying that far, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? It almost seems like something blew. And they said while it was going, there were sparks going while this car was driving fast in Hancock Park. And of course, the body was burned beyond recognition. The fingerprints had to come from the FBI, couldn't come from anywhere in the car. And the final report says no foul play. Sounds all kinds of foul to me. And as you can see in the graphic here on the top is a car that has experienced a car bomb, and below is Michael Hastings' vehicle. It also says in the graphic there that he contacted family and colleagues reporting that the FBI was following him and was heading off the radar. I also want to add that he had mentioned to one of his friends that he believed they were messing with his car. Just a few days later, on June 23rd, 2013, Dr. Kathleen Fisher gives this odd speech from, you guessed it, DARPA.
Right, so we've been hearing a lot today about the importance of improving computer security. As Dan just alluded to, though, it's not just traditional computers that we need to worry about. There are many other kinds of systems as well. The slide that's been omitted showed a result of the researchers at UCSD and the University of Washington hacking into the dashboard display of a typical American sedan, making it show that the car was going 140 miles an hour while in park. Drilling down a little bit, modern vehicles consist of between 30 and 100 embedded control units, which are essentially small computers connected via a CAN bus. These cars are required by law to have a diagnostic port, typically located under the steering wheel, that allows mechanics to download diagnostic information and to perform software updates. In a first paper, the researchers from UCSD and the University of Washington showed that if they could touch the CAN bus through that diagnostic port, they could take over all of the functionality of the car that's controlled by software. And in a modern automobile, that's pretty much everything. The brakes are controlled by software because of anti-lock braking. The acceleration is controlled by software because of cruise control. And in those fancy new cars that can park themselves, even the steering is under software control. The reaction to this first paper was somewhat muted, perhaps because if the researchers had access to that diagnostic port, they were inside the car, and so already had physical access to the brakes, acceleration, and steering. They responded with a second paper in which they showed a variety of ways of touching that CAN bus without physically touching the car. These attacks involved infecting the computers in the repair shop and then having that infection spread to the car through the diagnostic port, or hacking in through the Bluetooth system, or using the cell phone network to break in through the telematics unit that's normally used to provide roadside assistance. The most ingenious attack, though, used the stereo system in the car. The researchers were able to craft an electronic version of a song that played just fine in your home stereo system or on your personal computer. But when you put that on a CD and played it in the car CD player, it took over total control of your automobile.
Pretty disturbing stuff. Now, that's about a 9-minute long speech, and I will link it down below for you on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, you can search Kathleen Fisher, DARPA, and I would maybe adding hacking cars as a key search, and you'll be able to find that video. But really interesting stuff, quite disturbing. And again, I want to reiterate, 5 days after Michael Hastings dies in this mysterious crash. Not to mention, that was a speech from the very same group that General McChrystal is now using to combat disinformation on the internet. Post 4097, 43 minutes after the hour of 11, we get a Breitbart link. Q says, why would Pelosi, Democrats, block origination source, roll out investigation of COVID-19 in China, prevent public exposure of truth? Ask yourself why. Democrat, People's Republic of China. Exclusive, Congressman Nancy Pelosi blocking investigation into Chinese coronavirus origins. Tax money to Wuhan lab. She got her no face on right there. She's like, nope. Representative Guy Reschenthaler told Breitbart News this weekend that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi would rather investigate President Donald Trump again than focus on the actual origins of the Chinese coronavirus and U.S. tax dollars that went to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, from which intelligence officials increasingly believe this virus was leaked. Appearing on Breitbart News Saturday on Sirius XM 125, the Patriot Channel, Reschenthaler discussed his efforts to investigate tax dollars that flowed through a New York firm to the Wuhan lab. He said that Pelosi and House Democrats are not interested in holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable and instead want to focus their oversight efforts on politically harming President Trump again, just like they tried and failed with the partisan impeachment last year and earlier this year. We should have an investigative body looking at these grants, but Nancy Pelosi is not going to do that, Reschenthaler said. So you have myself and House Republicans. I can tell you I'm going to continue to look into these grants. I'm going to continue to look into the Department of Homeland Security as well to see what grants are going from there to China. I'm also looking at defunding the World Health Organization, and we can talk about that as well. But the bottom line of the Democrats' behavior is this. They hate this president so badly that they would rather side with the Chinese Communist Party than defend Americans and defending our spending and spend wisely and just be honest. That is their hatred for President Trump and disdain for President Trump's supporters. Now let me skip you down to this highlighted part right here. The Pentagon grant the congressman was inquiring about was for research into bat-borne zoonotic diseases and their potential as weapons of mass destruction or biological weapons. Okay, so we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and of course people were coming out saying this is another crazy conspiracy theory, and yet here we are investigating it. While it is unclear if that grant saw U.S. taxpayer money flowing from it out to the Wuhan lab, it is known that another grant that EcoHealth Alliance received did partially partially spend U.S. tax dollars in the Chinese lab. Okay, I think we see what's up, right? I think that we are going to see that when investigations actually go through with this, we're going to see that a lot of money flowed through it. And we saw a residual effect of this in some of these arrests. We talked about it just the other day. The professor that had been arrested, this Zhao Shangzhang, who had been arrested sneaking vials out of the country. We saw this in arrests in Iowa, same kind of similar thing where they were basically exporting genetically modified corn back to China. It looks like a lot of American taxpayer dollars were going to research out there in Wuhan. And of course, I think if we start really getting into that, we're going to see how deeply the World Health Organization is entrenched in this, the Democratic Party, and probably other people too. There are probably some Republicans involved in this too, as long as people are on the take for a little bit of coin. But I think the whole point is that this whole COVID-19 seems to be a very, very big scam. And whether or not it really was intended to be some sort of mass biological event, or if this is just a test run, we'll have to see. But what we can see right now is a lot of people showing their true colors, especially on the state level. So it definitely looks like this could be a test run for something down in the future. But the point Q is trying to make right now is that a lot of these Democrats are wrapped up with the People's Republic of China. Post 4098, 1 minute after the hour 12, we get this graphic right here showing Barack Hussein in the membrane, otherwise known as Renegade, yeah! A person who deserts and betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. And of course, that was his Secret Service codename. Why did Hussein Barry choose Renegade as USSS codename? Define renegade. Well, he knew the definition of renegade. That's why he chose it. He was thumbing his nose at us. Hussein Barry parents both fluent in Russian. Yeah, that's how they met in Russian class in the University of Hawaii, which is probably not super common in Hawaii. Is Russian a common language to learn? In Russia, it is. In Russia it is, and in a lot of countries it is. Not so much in Indonesia or Hawaii or the United States. Public career history, mom and dad. Well, mom was an anthropologist and his father was a politician and economist. He studied the economy. Public career history require Russian language as prerequisite. Well, I can tell you what normally does. Working on the farm as a CIA farm-raised, free-range, knuckle-headed clown. Farm work takes special skills. The farm is a reference to Camp Peary in Virginia, which has long been a site for training a lot of these CIA clowns. It looks to me like Q is suggesting a clown family, a clown background with this guy, this renegade, this freaking guy. Post 4099, I'll paint your car for $99. 6 minutes after the hour of 12. This is a little snippet from the April 27th memo from AG William Barr talking about a few different things. It was a memorandum talking about the need to prosecute anybody that is seeking to profit from the pandemic. But this also goes into the Constitution itself. And so, sorry, this is actually the full version here, and it's a little bit blurry, but we're just going to read this part here because this is the important part that we're talking about. Memorandum from the Attorney General. Subject: balancing public safety with the preservation of civil rights. Many policies that would be unthinkable in regular times have become commonplace in recent weeks, and we do not want to unduly interfere with the important efforts of state and local officials to protect the public. Yes, and this is a slippery slope, right? Because states have a lot of rights. And as many of you already know, because many of you are conservatives or Republicans or libertarians, and I'm sure there's Democrats out there too, whatever it is, you understand that these states should have the rights in a lot of these situations. But the Constitution is not suspended in times of crisis, meaning that your rights don't go away and the states don't have rights to infringe on yours. And that is where the federal government will often be needed to step in. That's sort of the way it's set up in a very generalized fashion. We must therefore be vigilant to ensure its protections are preserved and at the same time the public is protected. I thank you for your attention to this important initiative and for your service to our country. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, right? Mayor Lightlofer out there in Chicago, Governor Roy Cooper. A lot of these guys are starting to go out and arrest people simply for going back to work. You have rights. You have the right to exercise those rights. And it's probably a good idea. I saw a lot of comments saying that maybe people should print out those rights, keep them on your person at all times, whether it's in your wallet or in your car, so that you can remind people of your rights if need be. but it most certainly is. The onus is going to be on you at this point, because Q and President Trump can't do that in every single situation across the country. But it does look like they are indeed looking out for this, and they are willing to prosecute. So I have a feeling that over the next couple of years, we are probably going to see a lot of cases go to court dealing with this very situation. Post 4100, 7 minutes after the hour 12, we get a meme here from Thomas Jefferson. When the people fear government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. Yeah, and it doesn't take much to shift that. It really doesn't. It's amazing how powerful we really are when we just start to make decisions with our pocketbook, with our time, with our efforts, where we send our children, how we teach our children. All it takes is a few good decisions. I want to offer you up another quote from the great Joe Biden when he said, "You're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor." You don't even know the flavor. Post 4101, 45 minutes after the hour of 12. Why is there an active, coordinated disinformation campaign being deployed using misleading headlines, no original source attached, tactics, and pushed in attempt to amplify, direct original source attacks, or push predetermined and orchestrated false claim statements of others? Think decodes, constant MSM attacks. Why? When does the enemy expend ammunition? For what purpose? Question what you read from every source. Use discernment. So this is a pretty big topic, right? And I think what Q is really asking is for us to stay focused on the actual prize and the content that Q is actually giving us. Now, even myself as a researcher will go off on these other topics. A lot of this whole dog tweet and very good boy security stuff is all my own research, and I could be right, I could be wrong. I think I'm right, but I have to offer that up to you as something that's completely independent of QAnon. What QAnon spends most of their time talking about is FISA abuse and the media. And a lot of the different topics that QAnon wants to bring up will be covered in QAnon. Unfortunately, sometimes these extra narratives get added on, and there's not a lot of fact to support it other than just kind of maybe looking at a picture and assuming that something is one way or another. I also notice a lot of blanket statements get made that something absolutely is or is not. For example, 100% of Hollywood is fiending for adrenochrome. Well, any logical person should be able to decide that that is just simply not the case. Is there an epidemic? Yeah, very likely. I've done 2 videos to show that there's a lot of evidence to suggest it. And even then, I can't offer it to you as 100% conclusive. And I'm still working on a 3rd video and will probably have to offer you the same result. And I have to tell you that 95% of the information that I receive online is really, really good stuff. A lot of you guys email me with such brilliant stuff. Some stuff I just have to save and sit on for a while, think about, and I can't even respond to you yet because I'm still thinking about it or whatever. Your information is really great. So it's very clear that people are on the right track in so many different ways. At the same time, we also get a lot of things getting passed around from some random comment on 8kun or 8chan saying, you know, some guy said this. What do you think about this? Well, there's not much I can think about it if that's as far as I can go with vetting it. I don't know where it comes from. If it just comes from some anon on 8chan, it may or may not be the truth, right? And that's the only way that you can really take it. Remember, we're supposed to question everything. Use discernment. Question what you read from every source, and that includes me. I ain't afraid to be wrong. I'm in pursuit of truth, not in possession of it. So I feel like I'm getting I'm not trying to get soapboxy, but you just end up getting soapboxy. You try it. Post 4102, 10 minutes after the hour of 1, we get a Twitter status to P-Genium, and it's actually part of a conversation. I actually have Jeff up at the top blocked there, but this is what Jeff has to say. First of all, I ought to introduce Jeff. Jeff is likely a bot. I'm not even so sure it's actually Jeff. What he likes to do is comment at the top of every single President Trump tweet ever, kind of like those brothers Crass that we used to talk about. And then when he's done, he leaves a little thanks to Elon Musk. Thanks, Elon Musk, for doing this generous tweet. Am I understanding this correctly? Sheltering at home is a hoax. But, checks notes, JFK Jr. faking his own death in order to help Trump round up a gang of international sex traffickers is real. Holy effing S! You stupid idiots are why our country can't have nice things. P-Genium puts it back on him. Says, hey, in this case, you bring in the JFK Jr. speculation. Not only has QAnon not said this, but when asked directly whether JFK Jr. is alive, QAnon answered in the negative. The JFK Jr. speculation is fun, but not at all central to the main thesis that QAnon has been rolling out. Dummy. I like that you added dummy. That's what I would have done. I would have done that too, PG. I would have been like, yeah, dummy. Maybe I'm even going to comment now. I'm going to be like, yeah, dummy. And then PGenium, still dropping the science, says, great point, Sparky, to some tweet that I can't find because I probably blocked them or they blocked me. I don't know. Except QAnon has said none of these things. Fake news strikes again. Many others have been digging into the rumors around Hanks, possibly because of the explosion of perverts outed during the whole Epstein thing. But QAnon, nope. So I'm guessing that the tweet was talking about Tom Hanks. And of course, I've dug into it too, but we have to understand these things are separate from QAnon. QAnon might kind of allude to things from time to time, but if it's not coming from QAnon, it's not coming from QAnon. Doesn't mean that we can't go searching or that we can't go looking off onto other things. I just mentioned the dog tweets. I think there's a lot of meat to the Hanks issue too. But just because you saw a picture of Tom Hanks with his hands in the air doesn't mean Tom Hanks was arrested. Right? Q says, good example. See previous post. I think we're talking about the JFK Jr. speculation. Look, post 2611. Is JFK Jr. alive? No. Q. Now, you can do what you want with that. If you don't believe that to be true, that's fine. But don't put that on Q because Q is saying don't put that on me. I've heard the whole thing about, yeah, well, once he dies, he's no longer a junior. And look, if that's what you want to believe, you're welcome to it. But if you're stating it as absolute, you're kind of hurting a lot of really good researchers out here who are really trying to stick to QAnon's narrative. And it's important to make the distinction between what QAnon is saying and what we're saying. Doesn't mean that neither one is valid. I can already feel myself getting all soapboxy. Look, I don't know how to say this without getting soapboxy. Sometimes you got to get soapboxy. So here I am getting soapboxy. Do what you want. Whatever. But I think it's important to remember that when we are talking about QAnon, if we really want to legitimize QAnon, we need to focus on what Q has really focused on. And I've been covering this for nearly 3 years, and I'll tell you, most of it has been FISA abuse. FISA, so that you could become an expert at learning how the Obama administration sought to spy on their opposition. And that led to the spying of the Trump family, the Trump campaign, and half of Congress. And it's big and it's biblical. And yes, there's a lot of pedos in Hollywood. And yes, there's a lot of freaking creeps out there. But the fact of the matter is that we should always draw people back to the meat of the matter with QAnon, which is that we are talking about FISA. Getting off my stupid little soapbox. Post 4103, 53 minutes after the hour of 1. Q says sample past 30 days. Then we get a Bing link. Q says, do you understand? And it's basically going over the same story. This supposed QAnon believer arrested for trying to take out Biden. It's another one of these stories that kind of goes nowhere. And it's this person who clearly doesn't seem to be really interested in QAnon itself. It is just another hit piece. For those of you who are newer to QAnon, we've seen stories like this. We saw a story a couple of years ago. This guy was arrested on Hoover Dam, and he wasn't even really talking about QAnon. He was talking about releasing the FISA D-class. And we saw another one where this guy had murdered Anthony Comello had murdered this gangster. Turned out he was dating his niece. Didn't have much to do with QAnon at all, but because he drew Q on his hands somehow, magically, with handcuffs on, and you explain the logistics of that to me, it was linked to QAnon. So they're willing to do whatever they can to kind of discredit QAnon. But I think the bigger point in relation to what Q was talking about earlier is how serious this stuff is. For a lot of us, it's a matter of life and death, and it's it's all fun and game until that kind of stuff comes up, right? But the fact of the matter is that these guys are playing for keeps, and I think all of you at some point have had some sort of personal experience with this whole idea at some point, whether you've been blocked on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. You all have stories. You all get it. It's very serious. They're coming after you, and they're coming after me. And this isn't to rattle any kind of war drums, but it is definitely an effort to remind people that this isn't fun and games. This isn't just the new TV show to tune into. This is real deal. It's real talk. It's you and me. It's freedom. Soapbox. Pushing it away, not going there. Don't come near me. Post 4104, 58 minutes after the hour of 3, we see this compilation of headline titles, all essentially saying the same thing. And at least according to this graphic, they all look like they're within hours of each other. So you can see this is a mass attack right here. And it all says the same thing in regard to hydroxychloroquine. No benefits, more death. Sometimes they mix it up a little bit, make it a little funky. They say more deaths, no benefit. Doesn't matter, you decide. put the benefits or the death. Either way, it's the same dang thing, right? Now, this link takes you to One News Now, and unfortunately, that's what I'm getting right there. So I don't know exactly what's being said. But the title here says, Fauci knew about hydroxychloroquine in 2005. Nobody needed to die. Well, that's not necessarily any news to any of us, I don't think. I'm not sure what I'd be missing in that article. But we do know that Fauci knew. Of course he knew. Because they were dealing with other things. They were dealing with malaria. They were dealing with SARS. They were dealing with all kinds of things. This is Fauci. This is the World Health Organization. They're supposed to know these things. I showed you that Saudi Arabia knew all about it ever since 2012. So it should be no surprise, not to mention the fact that hydroxychloroquine has been prescribed to millions of patients since 1955. What I find mind-boggling is that we're still pointing it out to each other and that people don't seem to realize how obviously beneficial this really is, not to mention cheap. But instead, they want to push this dangerous and more expensive remdesivir, right? Because it's going to benefit their companies. We already get that racket. If you follow me on Twitter, I posted this story about this company from Madagascar, and they are bottling this drink made from the sweet wormwood. Of course, sweet wormwood contains quinine or quinine or quinino or quinones or quinine, whatever you want to say. I like to say quinones. You get the idea. It's in tonic water as well, right? This is something that's been around for a long time. It's a very simple kind of thing. And there's a lot of benefits, of course, to wormwood. I'm sure that many of you will chime in with your personal stories because that's exactly what happened on Twitter. A lot of you guys were talking about how you take it for yourselves. So this is this drink that they're bottling in Madagascar, and then they're sending it over to Africa. Now, I have no idea if it's going to end up just being some snake oil or not, but it seems like it couldn't be that harmful at least. But at least there are some other alternatives that we can take. But the fact of the matter is that hydroxychloroquine, which Q has stayed consistent on, President Trump has stayed consistent on, and a lot of us have. A lot of doctors have stayed consistent on this. It's cheaper, and it doesn't benefit any of these big companies, and that's exactly why. Post 4105, 15 minutes after the hour of 5, DARPA, Facebook, Twitter, Google. Pretty much consider all those the same thing. Democrat coordination and development of AI tool in attempt to counter your reach, now public. See previous drop. Demonstrates your collective influence. So we already know about the whole process here with McChrystal and the organization that he's working with and his new little project that is going to put your disinformation in check. Think MSM daily attacks, losing ground. You're winning the information warfare campaign. Support will always be provided. Undisclosed methods. Well, I for one am thankful for some of those undisclosed methods, so thank you very much, QAnon, for helping keep some of us on the air. After all, yours truly, still here. Still ain't got the Rona. 4106, 8 minutes after the hour 11. We see the 8chan logo. The title of the picture says 8chan logo, so I'm assuming we're talking about the 8chan logo. The link is to the NSA.gov. We talked about this a while back. This is a project known as Ghidra. Looks a lot like the 8chan logo. The National Security Agency released the source code of Ghidra, its reverse engineering tool, April 4th. This source code repository includes instructions to build on all support platforms, Mac OS, Linux, Windows. With this release, developers will be able to collaborate by creating patches and extending the tool to fit their cybersecurity needs. The source code is available for download at Ghidra-sre.org along with the 911 patch. Nice. Ghidra is a software reverse engineering framework developed by NSA's Research Directorate for NSA's cybersecurity mission. It helps analyze malicious code and malware like viruses and can give cybersecurity professionals a better understanding of potential vulnerabilities in their networks and systems. All right, so there you go. Q's calling attention to it. For those of you who are a little bit more experienced in this sort of thing, you guys can let me know what you think. Are you going to try it out? Are you a little bit wary of it? Let me know down below, but there's a link to it. Q says toolkits can be helpful. Maybe you need some tools. Maybe you need some tools in your toolkit. But at 4107, 12 minutes after the hour of 11, and Anon says, well, I should probably get around to messing with that. And Q says, yeah, maybe you should. That's all that is when they're acknowledging with the number there. They're saying, yeah, maybe you oughta. Post 4108, 26 minutes after the hour of 11, Q is responding to an Anon who says, gifts? And then we just see this picture right here. It's a gift with a red cross on it. We're talking about the American Red Cross. The picture seems to come from this Consumer Reports headline, Give the Gift of Health, and I don't see anything really suspect about the article. It's just talking about Christmas gifts and things like that, things that you can give that are the gift of health. But I'm more interested in that Red Cross, as I imagine many of you are. We all know that the Red Cross is a very old Rothschild organization. It's been around forever, and of course they're always trying to get your blood. Seems like sometimes they do a little more harm than good. Yeah, we've talked a lot about them, right? So what's up with this? I have no idea. But those Red Crosses are also on the ships Mercy and Comfort that were sent to our coast during this whole COVID Rona period, right? And of course, even though they were saying in New York that the hospitals were all overwhelmed, they were having all these troubles, it looked like a lot of people were getting laid off. So who's really on those ships? What's really going on those ships? Are we going to find out what's going on with that? Does that have anything to do with our Red Cross? I don't know. Q just posted these, but those are a few thoughts. You can let me know what you think down below. Post 4109, 44 minutes after the hour at 12, we see the Punisher logo, except this one's in black with red in the background. Makes it look a little bit darker. No comment right here. The time is coming is the JPEG title. And are we talking about Durham? Are we talking about Giuliani? We're just talking about the Punisher. Are we talking about Frank Castle? Is something about to go down in the Southern District of New York, which just so happened to have been the comic book character, the Punisher's stomping grounds? Sounds like it. My guess is something's about to go down in the city of New York. In New York! Those are your Q posts. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. All my alternate links are down below. My P.O. box is down below. If you're old school, if you got information for me, please do not DM me on Twitter. Please email me. My email is down below, as well as my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. All those links are down below. This is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay funky.